Letting someone go is not the moment you lose them. It's the moment you finally return to yourself. It's not an ending. It's a homecoming, a reunion with the parts of you that waited silently while you were busy trying to hold on to someone who kept slipping away. Letting go is rarely loud. It's rarely dramatic. Most of the time, it happens quietly, in the privacy of your own heart. It happens the moment you get tired of carrying someone who refuses to meet you. It happens the moment you realize your effort is writing a story they never planned to read. It happens when the pain of staying finally outweighs the fear of losing, and then something shifts. Something subtle, something soft, something sacred. You begin to choose yourself again, even before you fully admit it, even before you speak it out loud, even before you let yourself believe. You deserve better. Your soul knows. Your body knows. Your intuition knows. It knows. It's time to come home. Letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's the wisdom that comes after you've tried everything, after you've bent yourself into shapes you were never meant to hold, after you've quieted your needs to protect someone else's comfort, after you've forgiven wounds you never should have received, after you've given love in places that never offered safety, after your heart has finally had enough. That's when letting go stops feeling like failure and starts feeling like survival. But here's what most people never tell you. Letting someone go isn't just about losing them. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you abandoned just to keep the relationship alive. The parts you made small, the parts you dismissed, the parts you hid, the parts you sacrificed. Every time you tolerated confusion, every time you accepted breadcrumbs, every time you swallowed your intuition, every time you denied your feelings, every time you stayed quiet when your heart wanted to speak, every time you convinced yourself that maybe this is enough. Those were the moments you lost pieces of yourself. And when you finally walked away, you weren't walking into emptiness. You were walking back into wholeness. But letting go is complicated. It's layered. It's human. You don't let go all at once. You let go in small internal awakenings. The first awakening is the one where you realize you can't keep doing this. That loving them requires abandoning yourself. That staying means shrinking. That holding on means losing your peace. That their potential is costing you your reality. And when that truth lands, it lands deep. It shakes something inside you that can't be unshaken. You begin to see clearly what you used to justify, the inconsistency, the emotional unavailability, the avoidance, the excuses, the lack of effort, the one-sidedness, not because you suddenly became critical, but because you finally became honest. Honest with yourself. Honest about how much you've been absorbing. Honest about how much you've been tolerating. Honest about how much you've been carrying alone. And that honesty, even though it hurts, is the beginning of your freedom. The second awakening is when you realize you were never asking for too much. You were asking for the bare minimum. Clarity, respect, consistency, effort, emotional presence, a place to rest your heart. You weren't asking to be worshipped. You weren't asking to be perfect. You weren't asking for more than any adult relationship requires. But they told you you were asking for too much because they weren't capable of giving even a little. And deep down, you knew that, but you believed in their potential. You believed in what they could be if they healed, if they were ready, if they chose you, if they chose themselves, if they faced their wounds, if they grew. But they didn't. And you kept waiting for a version of them that never arrived. Letting go is the moment you stop waiting. The third awakening is the one that truly changes you. It's when you see that you didn't lose a soulmate. You lost a pattern, a cycle, an old wound, a familiar pain. You kept calling love. You lost the person who kept you stuck. You lost the story that kept you small. You lost the version of yourself who thought survival was the same as connection. You didn't lose a partner. You lost the illusions you built around them to protect yourself from the truth. And that loss is actually liberation. Letting go isn't the end of love. It's the end of self-abandonment. It's the end of chasing, the end of trying to prove your worth, the end of carrying a relationship on your back, the end of pouring into someone who only took because taking was easier than giving. Letting go is the end of exhaustion and the beginning of peace, the beginning of clarity, the beginning of alignment, the beginning of becoming yourself again. Because here's the truth. When you let someone go, you don't just release them. You release their confusion, their mixed signals, their emotional instability, their uncertainty, their inconsistency, their absence disguised as effort. You release the version of yourself that accepted all of that in the name of love. You release the pain of waiting for someone who never arrived. You release the fantasy you created to survive the reality you were in. And in that release, you return to your own soul. You start hearing yourself again, feeling yourself again, trusting yourself again, choosing yourself again. And little by little, you come back to the person you were before you were stretched thin, trying to be enough for someone who never knew what to do with you. You come back to your softness, to your intuition, to your strength, to your clarity, to your boundaries, to your power, to your light, to your center. You come back to the version of you that was always whole, but temporarily fragmented by the weight of a relationship you outgrew. And here's the beautiful part. Once you get yourself back, you don't want to return to who you were with them. Not because you hate them, not because you're angry, not because you're bitter, but because you've expanded, you've awakened, you've evolved, and the version of you that needed them no longer exists. Letting go didn't just free you from them, it freed you from the version of yourself that accepted less than what you truly deserved. This is only the beginning. There's more to uncover, more to heal, more truth to reclaim. You don't realize how much of yourself you gave away until the moment you stop giving. Because letting someone go isn't just about walking away. It's about finally noticing how small you had to shrink in order to keep them close. And that's the part no one talks about. The grief, the confusion, the identity crisis that hits when you release someone you once believed you couldn't live without. You don't just lose them, you lose the version of you that existed around them. And for a while, that feels like a death. But it's not a death. It's a shedding, a cracking open, a return. Because the moment you let someone go is the moment the real you finally gets a chance to breathe. But let's go deeper. Because this isn't just about breakups. It's about psychological reclamation, soul reclamation, energy reclamation. It's about remembering what you've forgotten. It's about seeing what you couldn't see while you were trying so desperately to hold on to someone who didn't know how to hold you back. Here's what truly happens. When you let someone go, you don't just lose a relationship. You lose the need for permission to exist. Because loving someone who cannot meet you creates a distortion. You become an echo instead of a voice, a shadow instead of a presence, a reaction instead of a self. And when you let them go, the distortion collapses. Suddenly, without their weight, pulling on your worth, your soul rises to its original height. Maybe for the first time in years. Let's talk about the moment. The shift begins. It's subtle, quiet, almost invisible. You wake up one morning, and something feels off. Not wrong, just different. Lighter somehow, strangely spacious. It's the feeling you get when your soul starts rearranging the furniture inside you, making room for the version of you that's been locked out. And slowly, piece by piece, you begin to return home. Because when you let someone go, your mind stops spinning in directions that never led anywhere. You stop overthinking every word, every silence, every tone, every shift in their energy. You stop reading emotional weather forecasts, trying to predict their mood. Before you dare to step into the room, you stop managing their feelings. Instead of living your own, you stop carrying a weight that was never yours. And suddenly, there's space, there's quiet, there's clarity, space you forgot you had, quiet you didn't know you needed, clarity you thought you lost. People think letting go is about strength. Sometimes it is, but more often, it's about truth. The truth that staying was costing you yourself. The truth that loving them required self-abandonment. The truth that they weren't choosing you with the same depth that you were choosing them. And the truth that your soul finally got tired of being negotiated with. Jung said that what you resist not only persists, it grows. And holding on to someone who isn't truly for you creates resistance so intense that it becomes your identity. You became the one who tries, the one who fixes, the one who explains, the one who understands, the one who forgives, the one who bends. But when you let them go, the identity you built around survival begins to fall apart. And beneath it, you rediscover something you haven't felt in a long time. Yourself. Here's the thing. Letting go isn't clean. It's not beautiful. It's not empowering at first. It's messy, chaotic, disorienting. Your heart still reaches for them. Out of habit, your mind still replays memories. Out of attachment, your body still reacts to their absence like a withdrawal. You think the pain means it was the wrong decision. But pain is not proof of failure. Pain is proof of release. It means the cord is finally breaking. It means you are stepping out of an emotional contract your soul never agreed to. And beneath the ache, something else begins. A quiet rebuilding, a subtle expansion, a slow awakening. You start noticing things, little things, fragile things. You laugh differently. You breathe deeper. You walk with more intention. You speak with more honesty. You say no a little faster. You say yes a little slower. Your energy returns to your body. Your intuition returns to your spine. Your heart returns to its rightful owner. You. One of the most powerful psychological shifts that happens after letting someone go is the end of self-gaslighting. Because when you're with someone who isn't emotionally available, you learn to invalidate yourself, to keep the peace. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should be more patient. Maybe I'm the problem. But when they're gone, your truth starts speaking louder. You realize your needs were not unreasonable. Your feelings were not excessive. Your hurt was not imaginary. Your intuition was never wrong. You weren't too much. They were too little. And finally, you can see that clearly. Letting someone go also reveals something else. How exhausted you were. You didn't notice it before. You were too deep in the cycle, too locked into the pattern, too busy surviving the emotional imbalance to recognize the toll. But after the separation, your body finally exhales, after years of holding its breath, and suddenly, you realize the truth. Healing doesn't begin when they leave. Healing begins when you stop waiting for them to return. And then comes the most unexpected shift. You start finding joy in places you forgot to look, in a quiet morning, in a song you used to love, in a moment of solitude that no longer feels like loneliness, in the softness of your own company, in the gentleness you extend to the parts of yourself you once hid. You become someone you didn't know you could be, a person who doesn't chase because they finally see their own worth. When you let someone go, you get yourself back, your fire, your softness, your depth, your voice, your rhythm, your insight, your intuition, your standards, your boundaries, your identity, your power, everything you lost while trying to be enough for someone who wasn't ready to receive you. This is the part that people misunderstand. Letting go doesn't make you hard. It doesn't close your heart. It doesn't make you cynical. It makes you wise. It makes you selective. It makes you aware. It makes you honest. It makes you sovereign. It teaches you that you can love deeply without losing your center, that you can be devoted without self-abandoning, that you can connect without collapsing, and most importantly, it teaches you that losing someone is not the end. Losing yourself is, and getting yourself back is the greatest healing you will ever experience. And here's the quiet miracle. Once you reclaim yourself, you stop longing for the person you lost, not because you stop caring, but because you finally see that what you were holding on to wasn't love. It was hope. It was attachment. It was potential. It was familiarity. It was emotional muscle memory. But it wasn't alignment. It wasn't reciprocity. It wasn't safety. It wasn't partnership. And it definitely wasn't fate. Letting someone go doesn't mean you failed. It means you refused to abandon yourself again. It means you chose truth over fantasy, self-respect over waiting, growth over loops, healing over helplessness, your future over your wounds. It means you finally decided to stop shrinking for someone who wasn't willing to grow. It means you finally returned to the person you were always meant to be. And the person you become after letting someone go, they're stronger, clearer, wiser, braver, freer, and more themselves than ever before. There comes a moment after the grieving, after the confusion, after the withdrawal from a person you once built your world around, when something shifts inside you in a way that feels almost sacred. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's gentle, but it's powerful. It's the moment you realize you're not trying to get back to who you were before they came into your life. You're becoming someone you've never been before. Because when you let someone go, the healing doesn't bring you back. It brings you forward, forward into clarity, forward into emotional maturity, forward into boundaries that feel natural, not heavy, forward into a level of self-respect that once felt impossible. You don't return, you evolve. And evolution is rarely loud. Most of it happens in the softness of how you begin treating yourself when no one is watching. It happens in the way you speak to yourself, in the mirror, in the way you no longer apologize for taking up space, in the way you stop performing for proximity, in the way you stop begging for crumbs. Because once you've lived off crumbs, you learn to recognize the starved version of yourself that you promised never to become again. But the deepest evolution is the return of your internal authority, the part of you that says, I know what I feel, I know what I need, I know what I deserve. I don't need permission to honor myself. For so long, you outsourced your intuition to someone who didn't even know what to do with their own. You dimmed your truth to keep their comfort intact. You swallowed your disappointment To protect their fragility, you shrank your needs. To avoid being too much, you carried the emotional labor of two people in a relationship designed for two. But now your intuition has come home to you. And once intuition returns, you no longer tolerate what once broke you. Here's something no one tells you. When you let someone go, you don't just lose the relationship. You gain a new level of courage you didn't know you were capable of. The courage to walk away from patterns. The courage to say enough. The courage to stop explaining your worth. The courage to stop negotiating your identity. The courage to let an ending be an ending. Because once you've ended the relationship that cost you yourself, every other decision becomes easier. You no longer fear letting go. You fear losing yourself again. And that changes everything. It changes how you date, how you communicate, how you give, how you receive, how you trust, how you love. You stop attaching to potential and start seeing reality. You stop ignoring red flags because now you recognize the cost of pretending not to see them. You stop romanticizing inconsistency because your nervous system remembers the chaos you swore never to return to. You stop settling for the bare minimum because you finally understand how deeply you were starving. Your heart softens, but your standards sharpen. Your compassion expands, but your tolerance tightens. Your love deepens, but your boundaries hold firm. This is what it means to get yourself back. You become whole without becoming hardened. You become open without becoming naive. You become loving without losing discernment. You learn that boundaries don't block love, they protect it. And for the first time, you feel safe inside your own skin. Then something even more profound happens. You start to realize that the person you let go was not the loss you thought they were. The real loss was the way you abandoned yourself while loving them. And the real miracle is the way you're no longer willing to do that ever again. You look back and think, I didn't lose them. I lost the version of myself who accepted so little. That's what growth looks like. Not bitterness, not resentment, not revenge, just truth. And truth is liberation. But let's go deeper. Jung believed that the parts of ourselves we abandon don't disappear. They wait. They wait in the unconscious, in the shadows, in the forgotten corners of the psyche, until we are brave enough to meet them again. And letting someone go forces that meeting. You meet the part of yourself that tolerated emotional neglect, that stayed too long, that kept hoping, that kept fixing, that kept forgiving, that kept believing potential over patterns. You meet the part of yourself that learned to settle because you thought love was something you earned instead of something you received. And when you meet that part with compassion instead of shame, your entire inner world transforms. You no longer punish yourself for the version of you who didn't know better. You honor them for surviving, for enduring, for loving with everything they had, even when it wasn't returned. You realize that the version of you who stayed is the same version of you who is finally choosing freedom now. And that version deserves love too. Here's the psychological shift that marks the true turning point. Your nervous system begins to regulate. You stop mistaking anxiety for connection. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop mistaking chaos for chemistry. You stop mistaking uncertainty for excitement. Your body stops bracing for emotional impact, stops anticipating rejection, stops preparing for disappointment. You begin to relax into the truth that peace is not boring. Peace is healing. And for the first time, peace becomes something your heart feels worthy of. Another shift emerges around this time. You start to see your past clearly, without blaming yourself or villainizing them. Because once you understand your emotional patterns, your attachment wounds, your triggers, your longing for closeness, your fear of abandonment, you realize something profound. You weren't broken. You were conditioned. Conditioned to chase love instead of receive it. Conditioned to earn affection instead of expect it. Conditioned to self-sacrifice instead of self-honor. Conditioned to settle instead of choose. And when you let someone go, you break that conditioning. The shackles fall. The loops end. The cycle cracks. And you finally become free to love in a way that doesn't destroy you. And then comes my favorite part, the part you don't see coming. One day, you feel grateful, not for the pain, not for the loss, but for the awakening. You realize that letting them go was not a tragedy. It was a return to your emotional independence, a return to your intuition, a return to your authenticity, a return to your inner authority, a return to your self-worth, a return to the life you were meant to live. Letting go didn't break you. It broke the version of you that could never become who you are now. And that's freedom. Then something even deeper settles in. You begin to trust life again, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally understand that what leaves is never meant for you, and what stays doesn't require you to betray yourself. You start to trust timing, trust endings, trust beginnings, trust your intuition, trust your standards, trust your path. You stop believing that love only exists in the places where you suffered. You stop believing that connection only counts if you have to fight for it. You stop believing that losing someone means losing your worth. You stop believing that being alone means being unchosen. You finally understand that your value has never been determined by who stays or who leaves. Your value is inherent, unshakable, undeniable. And once you know that, really know it, you become untouchable, not cold, not guarded, not distant, just rooted, rooted in yourself, in a way that no one can ever uproot again. When you let someone go, you don't just get yourself back, you get back the world you were too drained to explore, the opportunities you were too distracted to see, the passions you were too depleted to pursue, the clarity you were too overwhelmed to reach, the confidence you were too wounded to embody. You get back time. You get back emotional space. You get back your future. And most importantly, you get back the energy to create a life that finally includes you. Not the edited version, not the muted version, not the people-pleasing version, not the shrinking version, but the full version, the whole version, the empowered version, the sovereign version, the version of you that was waiting for the courage to let go. Because here's the truth. You don't heal by holding on. You heal by remembering who you are when the weight is finally gone. That's what this part is about. The awakening, the remembering, the reclaiming, the rising. You've survived the breaking. Now you step into becoming. There comes a moment in every healing journey when your heart stops looking backward and starts expanding forward. It doesn't happen with fireworks. It doesn't happen with grand revelations. It happens in the smallest ways, in the ways you begin choosing yourself without hesitation. And that's when everything changes. Because letting someone go doesn't just create a void, it creates space. Space that was once filled with confusion, with anxiety, with chasing, with trying, with overthinking, with self-doubt, with emotional scarcity. And as that space opens, something remarkable begins to fill it. You, the you who was silenced, the you who was tired, the you who was overlooked, the you who was minimized, the you who was dismissed, the you who was exhausted, the you who was waiting. She finally comes forward. This is the part of the journey where your energy starts shifting so subtly that others feel it. Before you fully understand it, you begin walking differently. You speak differently. You honor yourself differently. You don't negotiate your boundaries. You don't explain your worth. You don't apologize for your needs. You don't overextend for love. You don't chase validation. You carry yourself with a steadiness that comes from losing everything that once broke you and still choosing to rise. And this is where the psychology deepens. When a person finally lets go, their identity reorganizes. You are no longer someone defined by the relationship you lost. You are someone defined by the relationship you are building with yourself. And that relationship becomes the foundation for every choice you make going forward. The foundation becomes stronger, clearer, calmer, truer, because you stopped pouring into someone who only drained you, and now you pour into yourself in ways you didn't even realize you needed. One of the most surprising shifts happens around your standards. Your standards rise quietly, naturally, effortlessly, not because you're trying to be picky, not because you're bitter, not because you're jaded, but because peace has become your new baseline. You don't welcome energy that disturbs you. You don't entertain connections that confuse you. You don't participate in dynamics that diminish you. You don't force anything anymore. You don't cling. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't settle. Because once you've healed enough to stand alone, you stop making exceptions for people who make you feel lonely while you're with them. And then comes the most misunderstood part of letting someone go. You stop desiring the version of love that once felt familiar. You stop craving intensity, masquerading as chemistry. You stop craving inconsistency, masquerading as excitement. You stop craving emotional highs that distract you from emotional lows. You finally understand that the love you used to chase was tied to wounds, not worth. And when a wound stops running the show, your entire love blueprint transforms. This is where you begin to attract differently. You attract people whose nervous systems feel safe, people who communicate clearly, people who are consistent, people who don't flinch at emotional depth, people who don't fear vulnerability, people who don't punish honesty, people who show up fully. You attract emotionally available love when you become emotionally available to yourself. And the version of you emerging now is someone who refuses to abandon herself ever again. But here's the deeper truth. Letting someone go doesn't erase your love. It redirects it. It brings your love back home, back inward, back to the places you neglected for too long. You start nurturing the parts of yourself that you once ignored just to keep someone else comfortable. You begin healing the wounds that were triggered because you stayed somewhere your soul had already outgrown. You begin reclaiming the dreams you paused because someone else couldn't support them. You start living again, really living, not in survival mode, not in emotional scarcity, not in self-doubt, but in expansion, in openness, in truth, in power. This is the part where life begins to move with you instead of against you. You find clarity in places that once felt foggy. You find strength in moments that once felt overwhelming. You find peace in the version of yourself you are finally becoming. And that peace is not circumstantial. It's internal. It's rooted. It's earned. Peace becomes your homecoming. But there's something else. Something people don't talk about enough. When you let someone go, you reclaim your future. You reclaim the love you haven't met yet. You reclaim the opportunities you couldn't see. You reclaim the joy you forgot how to feel. You reclaim the confidence that was buried beneath heartbreak. You reclaim the creativity that was suffocated by stress. You reclaim the possibilities that were waiting on the other side of your courage. You reclaim the destiny that wasn't possible as long as you were holding on to what wasn't meant for you. And that's when the final shift happens, the shift into gratitude, not for the person, not for the pain, but for the transformation. You realize that losing them was how you found you. Their absence became the space your soul needed to expand. Their departure became the doorway to your next chapter. Their silence became the sound of your own voice returning. Their goodbye became the beginning of your healing. And you look back, not with longing, not with resentment, not with regret, but with understanding. Understanding that life was never taking someone from you. It was bringing you back to yourself. When you let someone go, you don't end the story. You rewrite it. You rewrite the way you love. You rewrite the way you choose. You rewrite the way you show up. You rewrite the way you protect your heart. You reclaim the pen. You reclaim the narrative. You reclaim the power you once handed over too easily. You stop being a supporting character in someone else's life and become the main character of your own. And that is the ultimate return. Here is the final truth. The truth your healed self already knows. Letting someone go doesn't diminish you. It expands you. It brings you back to the woman you were always meant to be. Strong, centered, certain, aligned, clear, whole. You didn't lose love. You lost the version of it that was shrinking you. You didn't lose a person. You lost the illusion that you needed them to feel worthy. You didn't lose your heart. You lost the burden of holding someone who never held you back. And now you rise, not in anger, not in bitterness, not in resentment, in truth, in self-respect, in self-loyalty, in self-connection, in self-love. Because when you let someone go, you don't just get yourself back, you get your life back. And this time, you're not abandoning yourself for anyone.